Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into my official college football week number 2 reaction, where I take a look at all of the ranked games and then look at the ESPN FPI and see how it reflects in terms of that. We will begin with Georgia destroying Tennessee Tech. An easy blowout victory. I mean, look at this, 3-3 in the fourth quarter. But yeah, Georgia was around 54.5 point favorites. They did not cover. Not that it matters all that much. Georgia yesterday actually got a lot of help when you look at what happened. Not that they need it, but you look at Clemson destroying Appalachian State. That's going to in turn help Georgia because of their analytics. They destroyed Clemson, and with Clemson destroying a solid group of five team, that's going to bump them up even more. Carson Beck did have 5 touchdown passes, but yeah, this is typical Georgia against a really bad team. They really will never get into the 70s, get into the high 60s. They normally just take their 52-7, 48-3 type win and be done with it. You did have Ohio State annihilate Western Michigan. So last week they win 52-6, but it was kind of a few late defensive touchdowns. They didn't cover the big time spread there, the 50-point spread. This one, the spread down to 37.5. They easily cover it. And then that's with them really pulling everyone there in the fourth quarter, only scoring a touchdown. Western Michigan only got 99 yards of total offense. Quinshawn Judkins I think he's better than Henderson, honestly. I mean, he is really good. And he had an 80-yard run that got called back. I mean, he would have had like 190 yards on 10 carries. He had an 80-yard run that should not have gotten called back. Will Howard looked good. Seems like he's just the distributor right now, getting the ball to the playmakers. He did also have a rushing touchdown. He had like 260 yards in the first half. They didn't throw a lot in the second half. Jeremiah Smith looks like a mini version of Julio Jones. Everyone just keeps talking about how ridiculous it is that he's a true freshman. He does look like he's a junior ready to leave for the NFL, and he's a true freshman. 119 yards and a touchdown. But yeah, Ohio State is going to help themselves in terms of the FPI winning this game against a decent Western Michigan school who did have a decent game themselves with Wisconsin in week 1. They ended up losing, but they were leading that game going into the fourth quarter. So Ohio State pitching a shutout there, 56-0. Next, you've got the big game, Texas over Michigan. Michigan, really weird situation where we all wondered going into the season, they have to get a transfer portal QB. What's going on? Then everyone thought it was going to be Orgy, the dual threat QB. Then it turned out of nowhere to be Davis Warren, and he was just not good. The Michigan offense really couldn't muster a touchdown until absolute garbage time. They were losing this game 31-6 and then scored a very late touchdown. Quinn Ewers looked really good, especially in the first half under pressure. Texas actually had a touchdown really early in this game that got called back, and then they missed a field goal on kind of an iffy holding call. So they very easily could have scored 38. And really in the fourth quarter, they just tried running the clock out. They didn't score at all. So this is a huge win for Texas. You don't want to say, oh, they're a lock for the playoff, but right now they have ascended to the number 1 overall team in terms of ESPN FPI in front of Georgia, just barely. And so right now, Texas, I mean, that's a big win. And if you're Texas, you hope Michigan wins because worst case scenario, you lose 2 or 3 games. You've got this huge road non-conference win in the big house. It becomes a little bit of a problem if Michigan loses 4 games. Then that win looks a lot less impressive than it does right now. Michigan will be moving down. I'm sure they'll still be ranked, though. And then they do have like Arkansas State next week. But then they have USC. Michigan honestly could be unranked in a few weeks if they lose to USC at home. But either way, that's a huge win for Texas. Quinn Ewers, 3 touchdown passes. He looked really good. Their tight end looked good as well. Yes. And they've got a good stable of receivers there, too. Isaiah Bond and company. So moving on, Alabama. So Alabama ends up scoring 28 points in the fourth quarter. This was a very close game, believe it or not. At one point, it was 14-13. It was like we were in the twilight zone. There was, I think, a flag on like 10 straight plays. It was ridiculous. Bama was allowing a lot of big runs, especially in the third quarter of this game, but they end up getting the job done. They end up winning this game, not covering, but honestly, they came close considering 28-3. I was like, man, Alabama could still end up blowing out South Florida just because there was so much time left. I didn't think they'd score 28 points in the fourth quarter, but they end up doing that. Jalen Milroe was all right. This Bama team, it'll be interesting. I mean, last year you could say, well, they struggled with South Florida, and these are early season games. It is what it is. But Bama does improve to 2-0. And South Florida, it's a real shame with South Florida. They're a decent team, but they've got a very hard group of 5 schedule. Like their next 3 matchups, they have a game in 2 weeks at Miami. They've got Memphis. They've got another, maybe UTSA, although this year UTSA doesn't seem that good, but they've got like 4 straight tough games coming up. So I don't really think they're going to be like 5-1 or 6-1. They'll probably be more like 3-3 because of the tough schedule, but they are a decent team this year. How about this? Northern Illinois outright beats Notre Dame after Notre Dame had their victory on the road at College Station. Notre Dame now or I guess they were the number 5 team in college football. They will be moving down significantly. Northern Illinois had a really nice offensive performance last week against a bad team this week. Very weird start to this game. So Notre Dame marches down the field, scores a touchdown on like the opening drive. Then Northern Illinois, for whatever reason, starts at their 2-yard line. So think about that. You've got Notre Dame 28-point favorites. They score a touchdown right away. Then, for whatever reason, because of a bad return on a kickoff or a penalty, Northern Illinois down 7-0 early in the first quarter, starting at their own 2-yard line. They end up getting a first down and then getting like an 83-yard touchdown pass to their running back out of the backfield, streaking down the sideline. And so it was like 7-7 with 10 minutes left in the first quarter. And then this game ends. And my goodness, Riley Leonard was horrible. Riley Leonard, I think, had 41 pass attempts for under 200 passing yards. In college, even in the NFL, that is terrible. I think Northern Illinois should be ranked. We'll have to see what ends up happening. No, this is very interesting for Notre Dame. If you're Notre Dame, you've got to hope Northern Illinois somehow finishes the season 11-1. You've got to hope this somehow becomes a somewhat quality loss, because if Northern Illinois ends up going 7-5 and loses 4 games in the MAC, then I think Notre Dame, because they're not in a conference, they have to go 11-1 to make the playoff. If they go 10-2, and also their schedule is not very hard now, they're not going to pick up any huge wins. They have a game against Florida State. Florida State might be 0-3 because they face Memphis next week. So, I mean, this is serious here. And when it comes to Northern Illinois, I would say rank them at number 25. Notre Dame, will they still be ranked after losing to Northern Illinois this early in the season? They're going to drop significantly. And I think Notre Dame pretty much has to win out. Maybe you can make an argument if Northern Illinois finishes the season like 10-2. If Notre Dame goes 10-2, they might be able to make it just barely as an 11 seed. But there's a big problem losing to a MAC team at home when you don't necessarily have all of the resume builders to make up for that if you lose another game on top of it. So I think Notre Dame pretty much has to win out now, even though this is the 12-team playoff. We say their second chance. This is their second chance. If Notre Dame would have lost to Northern Illinois in the 14 playoff, they would be out. I mean, you cannot lose to a MAC school at home. This is Marcus Freeman. This is, again, they lose to Stanford. They were like a 3-9 team 2 years ago. They lost to them. They lost to Marshall at home a few years ago. Remember, they lost to Cincinnati, although Cincinnati that year was really good. But these games at home, it's really, really bad, and it's a big problem. Ole Miss destroys Middle Tennessee 52-3. They end up covering that spread. Vegas, I'm sure, lost a lot of money on this game because everyone was betting Ole Miss after they destroyed Furman 76-0, and the spread got bet up like 7 or 8 points. So, Ole Miss, not surprising. I saw Jackson Dart at halftime was like 15 of 15 for 250 yards or something. It was crazy. Man, their running back went 14 carries, 165, and 4 touchdowns. Ole Miss right now, they're beating up on bad teams. Oregon ends up beating Boise State on a walk-off field goal, 37-34. So this will be interesting. Boise State right now does seem like the best Mountain West team. They did suffer a loss, but I do think, it just depends. Boise State, you play a tough non-conference game like that, your margin of error goes down significantly. What if you lose to a Mountain West team? Dylan Gabriel was decent. Dylan Gabriel didn't throw very many passes in this game. Oregon's had a very weird 2 games. Evan Stewart, the transfer 5-star receiver, had a nice game, 512 and a touchdown. Alshon Jeanty, he actually should be the Heisman favorite. 25 for 192, 3 touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns in 2 games. He's got to be the Heisman favorite. If Boise State, they go 12-1, they win the Mountain West, he could win the Heisman very easily. It's wide open right now, and his numbers are just absurd. But I will say Oregon, they're looking worse than I thought they were going to be. They were 19.5-point favorites based off of preseason alone, and they had the bad week 1. Although, to be fair, Idaho is not too bad. But you shouldn't have a 10-point win against Idaho, but Idaho is actually pretty good, to be fair. But Oregon barely beats Boise State. If you're Oregon, the one thing you can say, Boise State probably will be a ranked team this year just because they look really good. And so you can say that's a ranked home non-conference win. But very close win nonetheless. Man, what happened to Penn State? Penn State barely beats Bowling Green, sitting as huge, like 34-point favorites. I mean, everyone was betting on Penn State. They barely win this game. It was not a game where it was necessarily like they were going to lose at the end. But it was one of those games where it's like Bowling Green scores 24 points in the first half. I mean, Penn State, they held serve in the second half with their defense, but not a good performance there. I still like Penn State. It's one of those early season aberration games. Look at their tight end, Warren. 8 catches for 146. That's interesting. You do have Missouri beating Buffalo, shutting them out 38 to nothing. Missouri, wow, I mean, Cook didn't even have a touchdown pass. 1 interception, no touchdown. Theo Weiss, I remember the transfer receiver. That's a nice stat line, 13 for 149. But yeah, I mean, that's a good win. They did cover the spread. I didn't think they would, mainly because I thought Buffalo would score. I mean, like you're 34.5 point favorite, you only score 38. You think you're not going to cover, but Buffalo gets shut out in that game. I necessarily don't think Missouri's defense is that good either, honestly, but they did shut them out because Buffalo's a MAC school. It is what it is. Missouri, they end up winning that game. They're 2-0 against the spread this year. Utah beats Baylor. Pretty normal game for them. I mean, it's just defense. I know Cam Rising, there's an injury concern about him again, so that'll be interesting. I mean, it looks like he didn't pass for very many yards. DeQuan Finn was the leading passer in this game, 115 passing yards. This is typical football for Utah at home. It's defense, it's suffocation, and I mean, they were beating Baylor. Baylor scored 9 points in the third quarter, but yeah, this doesn't really surprise me, this result, Utah beating Baylor, but they didn't cover the 15-point spread. Miami beats Florida A&M. Yeah, they scored a bunch of points in the third quarter of that game. Cam Ward continuing the early season Heisman stats, 304, 3 touchdown passes. Miami, they should be a top 10 team soon. They were around like 45, 46 point favorites, so maybe it pushed in terms of that game. USC beats Utah State. There's a big narrative developing about USC and their defensive coordinator, who very likely is going to get a head coaching job next year somewhere. USC's defense looks really good. Utah State, obviously not the best team, but they did have a good offensive performance, I believe, if I remember correctly, in week 1. And so USC, they've got that huge game against Michigan in a few weeks on the road, 3:30 game. This is big stuff. USC, the defense is back, 48 to nothing. A very easy win. They very easily covered the spread in that game. Tennessee beats NC State 51 to 10. So NC State is done. They're gone. Bye-bye. Western Carolina, they barely beat them, and then they get annihilated by Tennessee. And Tennessee, I had this team making the playoff. I feel good about it. They should be at least, I would say, a top 10 team. You win it by 41 points. I mean, NC State is overrated. NC State shouldn't have been ranked going into this game, but still, that's a huge blowout win. They were around 9.5 point favorites going into that game. Oklahoma barely beats Houston. They score a safety in the fourth quarter, 2-0, 16 to 12. Yeah, Jackson Arnold threw a red zone interception, but even if he didn't, I mean, Houston had a horrible week 1 performance against UNLV. And wow, Oklahoma, that's a big red flag. You've got a lot of tough games coming up. You win by 4. I mean, you get the win, but yeah, that's a tough game. After a week 1 they thought they could build on, destroying Temple 51 to 3. They nearly lose that game. Oklahoma State wins in overtime, 39 to 31. Double overtime, excuse me, Oklahoma State. I mean, Arkansas's QB 314, their running back 149, and their top receiver 10 for 164. Give Oklahoma State credit. I know it looks like South Dakota State, though, might not be as good as we thought, so maybe Oklahoma State, that win in week 1 isn't going to look as good. But I will say Arkansas does look like a solid team. They do look good. They kind of blew this game. They were up 14 to nothing, 21 to 7 at half. And Oklahoma State ends up scoring 18 points in the fourth quarter, but give them credit. That's some adversity, and the Big 12 needed this. Could you imagine like a low-tier SEC team beating Oklahoma State? That would be terrible for their conference, so that's good for Oklahoma State. Kansas State beats Tulane. I'm not high on Kansas State. If you guys watched this game, it was really fluky. Tulane should have won this game for sure. I had Tulane winning in an upset. At least they covered the 8.5 point spread, but Tulane was driving, and then I think it was either a strip sack. I think it was a strip sack, scoop and score when they were driving. It's a 14-point swing. Kansas State didn't impress me. Kansas State, they should be unranked. I think Northern Illinois is better than Kansas State. I mean, come on. Dude, Tulane should have beaten them. That was a ridiculous game. I mean, look at Mario Williams, the transfer receiver from USC. Their QB goes for 342. Hughes goes for 128. LSU beats Nichols. What a man. Nobody scored in the fourth quarter of this game. Wow. 44 to 21. Boy, LSU does not look good. How does Nichols score 21 points in 3 quarters? Nussmeier had 6 touchdown passes. Nichols running back, 145 and 2 touchdowns. Oh, Kyron Lacey isn't even on here. But, I mean, LSU looks rough. Maybe they'll improve. I still think they'll improve. But I really thought this was going to be like a 70 burger for LSU and they would win 72-7. Because normally that's what happens with them. Illinois beats Kansas. That's a tough loss for Kansas. This game was thrown late in the second quarter. Kansas was winning. Pick six, like with 30 seconds left in the second quarter. You cannot have that. That's a huge swing. And then Kansas doesn't score in the fourth quarter at all. I still like Kansas. I think Kansas will be fine. Illinois, though. Is Illinois going to be ranked? Do we need to rank Northern Illinois and Illinois, and then Northern Illinois faces Illinois in the playoff in a rivalry? Why is Illinois taking over college football right now? The state of Illinois, they've got the best teams in college football. Man, I can't believe did Devin Neal get hurt? 14 carries for 101. Altmaier, 192, no touchdowns, no interceptions. What a boring game that is. Boy, what happened to Arizona's offense? You know, I saw this game. I was live streaming at the end of my live stream. I saw they had 1st and goal at the 2-yard line with 14 minutes left in the first quarter. And my reaction was, oh God, this is going to be another 66-17 type game. I mean, you're at 1st and goal at the 2-yard line, and they only got a field goal, and then nothing happened after that. Like, literally nothing happened. Northern Arizona was up 10-6. Yeah, this Arizona team is not good. I'm sorry. Northern Arizona, the FCS team, was up at halftime. Noah Fafita, I mean, 173, a touchdown and interception. That's not a good game. Iowa State beats Iowa 20-19. Nice little rivalry. Is Iowa State going to get ranked? I don't think so, but that's a good win for them. Iowa's running back had a nice game. Louisville beats Jacksonville State. They cover that spread. That was a 27.5-point spread. Louisville looks good. They do look good. Kyle McCord out of nowhere. Kyle McCord, the Heisman leader? Dude, this is crazy. Dude went for like 350 passing yards in the first half. Syracuse Kyle McCord. Way better than the Ohio State version. I don't know. But listen, Georgia Tech, I thought Haynes King had a good game as well. This was a noon game. Georgia Tech's not going to be ranked. Syracuse might be ranked. Who knows? It'll be interesting. And then this is probably one of the weirdest games I've seen. Unfortunately, nobody scored in the fourth quarter, but at halftime this game, it was 56-13 at halftime. Clemson just erupted, dude. They had like 600 yards of offense in the first half, so that's a really good win for Clemson. We're going to take a look at the FPI and see these trends. You can see Texas, the number 1 overall team. Georgia, Bama moved down a spot. But look at this. There's a clear top 4, and then there's everyone else. You've got the top 4 separated by 1.5 points, and then there's a 5-point gap in between Ohio State and Tennessee. Tennessee now the number 5 team in college football. Ole Miss up 2 spots. Penn State with their bad performance. Look at USC at number 8 right now. USC at number 8. Notre Dame. People think they should drop a lot further than that. They're at number 10. It's an analytical model, so they're not going to drop in crazy far. Louisville at number 11. Louisville in front of Miami. Wow. Oregon drops again. Clemson is back up 8 spots. That doesn't surprise me. That was a huge blowout win against a decent team. Oklahoma down significantly. UCF at number 16. I do like UCF. UCF's been blowing some teams out. They blew out Sam Houston. Michigan down. UCF in front of Michigan. Yeah, these things are a little bit wonked right now. I'll be honest. Kansas State up 3 spots. Boston College up to number 24. People think Boston College should be ranked. Arkansas up to number 23. Washington is up. Indiana is up to 26 because they destroyed Western Illinois and scored 77 points. These teams got to start dropping 70 burgers. You move up. You drop a 70 burger, you're going to move up. Good for Indiana. But how are they 26? That doesn't make any sense. How are they in front of Kansas? Nebraska up to 28. I think Nebraska, they're going to be a team that's going to be on the fringe of getting ranked. 0-2, Florida State moves up 4 spots with a bye week. South Carolina up 16 spots. That was a really good performance against Kentucky. Really good. Arizona down. They got to be unranked. Arizona's got to be unranked. I'm sorry. California, very nice road win at Auburn. Oregon State up. They won like 21-0 or something. SMU down 11 spots after their loss. Kentucky down 27 spots. Horrible performance. Vanderbilt now a top 55 team at number 54 up 14 spots. Colorado down 19 spots. UNLV after dropping 72 points against Utah Tech up 16 spots. Wisconsin down 16 spots. They're terrible. They're going to get crushed by Alabama probably. Although I don't know, that game's at home. Maybe Wisconsin can hang in there against Alabama based on what we saw this past week. Michigan State with a nice road win at Maryland. They're up. Virginia, I think, yeah, they beat Wake Forest. Northern Illinois up to number 74. Yes. Texas State with a blowout huge win, up 31 spots. James Madison barely beat. Who did they barely beat? Gardner Webb, down 35 spots. Ouch. NC State is down to number 82. Oh, God. Bowling Green is about to pass NC State. Fresno State. Yeah, Fresno State had a weird game. They won like 46-30. App State, yeah, they're going to move way down after that. UTSA this year is just not good. They're horrible this year. They're terrible. Florida International might be better than UTSA this year. Central Michigan down significantly. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.